Welcome back to First Year in Medical Device Sales. I am your host, Jacob McLaughlin, and today I wanted to come to you talking about quarter four. Right now, we're currently in October, going into November. It just started for a lot of companies if they run on the fiscal year, quarter four, which is October to the end of December. And I wanted to just give a little light of what a lot of times comes here. And especially if you guys are new into this industry, if this is your first quarter four, what you're going through, that it's normal a lot of times. So the best way I can always explain quarter four to everybody is the Wild West. It is crazy. It is people trying to figure out, are we hitting quota? We're way off. We're going to do a massive push. You'll see a lot of times meetings with the C-suites and people coming in and having conversations and how do we close a $1 million gap in the next 2 months. But also for some, it's, hey, we're absolutely crushing. Let's actually lay off so we don't go too much over, so we don't hurt ourselves, right? So there's really a lot of times you see the two extremes. Again, then there's people that are like, hey, I'm trending right for where I need to be. But again, those are still add the stress because we've watched people, and I know people personally who've done that. They've been trending, and then it gets to the point where they finish 99.5%, and they missed it by 3 cases that unfortunately canceled the last week. What also comes into Q4 for a lot of people, especially just depending on what division you're in, is especially with surgeries, most people are now getting a lot of their surgeries in because it's the end of the year. They got their maxed out deductible for insurance and it's all coming in. So why I wanted to make today's podcast is just to have you guys all understand it's super normal for Q4 to be absolutely crazy, especially if this is your guys' first year in med device sales and you're like, what did I sign up for? What is going on? Just understand this is super normal. But I just wanted to give you guys some tips as well as what I did and how I handled quarter four, especially when we would go through this time. Because for myself, when I was at Medtronic, they actually don't run on a fiscal year. They actually do it a little different. And what I mean by that is they don't run the January to December. They actually go a different fiscal year of the fact of they would go from starting in May and they'd go till April, right? And so that's how they would get you rocking and rolling. And so the reason I'm sitting here telling you that is because it's all how you play it. So again, it might be too late for some of you with this, but just so you all know is when I was the rep at Medtronic and same thing when I was with Innovis and it comes to the end of the quarter, what a lot of times I would do is I always focus on relationships, building that relationships, making sure I show that I follow through and I'm always a resource and doing all this stuff. That's when I would go and cash in on all these favors, right? I know I just talked to some reps at Medtronic and they're still facing back orders and all the stuff that they shouldn't be facing from 4 years ago, but apparently they still are. And the reason I'm saying that is because, I would go and I had really good personal relationships with like supply management, a lot of the people doing purchasing, a lot of the higher ups, and I would just continue to have conversations with them. A lot of times it wasn't from my doctors. I would actually be going to the actual hospital themselves. And I would be like, hey, you guys have this many cases coming up. I see it on the board. Or we would be projecting for the end of the year. And I'd really usually do this like November, early December, if you're going in that route for you guys now. For me, it was more like that March and April time. But then I would just have those conversations of like, hey, you have these cases coming up. You have a lot of stuff going on, right? And that's where for yourself, you can start having those conversations of like, hey, we have back orders. I don't know what's going on. It probably would be safe because it's the end of the year. A lot of people are going to probably start purchasing. So that gets you into, January, February, it could go into more back orders. And that's what they've actually told us. And so to just ensure that you have everything, I would put in an order now. And just so you guys know, that's how I got 2 orders over $30,000 and $40,000 literally within 5 days of each other, did over $70,000 in revenue of a blade that cost, $1,000 or $900 was because I was able to go have those conversations with these people. So again, the reason I'm just sitting here telling you is a lot of times me personally, I would go and talk at the hospital level instead of just going to the surgeons right away because the surgeons are going to have their cases and they're doing their thing. But I would go to that level and just start being like, hey, what do you guys need? Hey, we might be facing back orders. It's the end of the year, going through that. Something to also keep in mind is like, especially if you guys are on that fiscal year of like, hey, it's ending in December 31st, you need to understand, and it's really helpful when you can find out what the hospital runs their year at because they have budgeting. And if you guys don't know this and it comes into everything is they actually, for like a tax purpose is they're like, hey, we need to spend stuff at the end of the year. That's why you'll see hospitals go buy a bunch of things. And like, I just remember being at one of them. They're like, we spent over $3 million on the machines and they've been here for 3 months and we've never touched them, right? But it's because there's budgets that these hospitals all account for. And so the reason I'm saying that is you guys just need to kind of learn that so you can have conversations. That makes you a better rep, because if you know when their fiscal year is, you know when they need to spend money as well, you can get your supplies, if you have a capital equipment or whatever it is, pushed in there. Now, the one thing I do just want to state is a lot of times when I was with one of our accounts, we were doing planning in July, right? So they would be able to buy it the following March because of how their year ran, right? So then I could project that for the future year. That's setting you up for success in the future for where you're currently at. But you just want to have that understanding of kind of what's their numbers, what's their fiscal year, like, right? And then there's the different buckets. If you guys haven't learned this, everyone has different buckets, right? If it's under $5,000, they usually can buy it that day. If it's over $5,000, they're going to have to go to a committee, and it just goes on. So my biggest advice to you all is just understand that it's super normal to be really stressed, to having managers going crazy because their jobs are on the line and everything. And that's what I want to just kind of mention to you all and kind of end with for you all too, is just understand where you're going to see a lot of stress, and just don't buy into it. Is people start going hard in Q4, freaking out, because then Q1 is usually when there's promotions, but there's also layoffs. They're going to do some changes in the company. And so that's just part of it, right? But what I've watched is a lot of people in Q4, if they're really losing it or if they're not performing or whatever, they can start spiraling really bad in this purpose or in this time. And also as well, if you have somebody who's absolutely crushing it, you have those people who are like, hey, I'm not going to go too hard. They might sandbag a little bit because they don't want their number to get too big. Now, the one thing I do want to just mention on that, talking with a lot of reps in the industry, there's two thoughts to this. And number one is, if you're trying to be at a place for years to come, right, then yes, that's probably the smarter move of like, hey, if I'm running at 102%, 103%, I don't want to get it to 115, 120, 130, because you might get that payout, but then most likely they're going to jack up your quota way more, right? I can just sit here and tell you it's what happened to me at Medtronic, right? But again, it wasn't just my quota, everyone's quota got jacked up. But I went and I was like, I'm going to go get this massive payout, and then I'm going to be able to go wherever. But if you're wanting to stay somewhere, again, if you're talking to a lot of strategic reps will usually run under 103%, 105%, because they don't want to go too much, because they don't want too big of a lift on their quota for the following year. And then they know if they just do one or two big deals, they're going to go hit their quota. And that's how you have a successful career, going back and back and back and back. Now, there's also the other side of it, like myself, just so you know, is like, I never married a company. I loved where I was at, but when I started seeing the writing on the wall, I also was like, I'm going to absolutely crush it. I'm going to make my payday. And then we'll see where it takes us. Because, for example, just so you know, I did that. I was able to increase my territory. I, again, finished top 10, did very well. But then what actually happened is they told me, hey, we're not actually going to increase, because they actually ended up giving me another territory where the rep was not performing and they left. And so they're having me absorb it. And then that territory wasn't even running at 70%. So they're like, hey, it's going to basically equal out and you're going to be fine. And I was like, okay. And so I ended up going really well, crushed it in that year. And then the following fiscal year, they gave me a new quota and they had over doubled it. And so the reason I'm just saying that to you all is because this is where I just had the conversation is, love the company you're at, make sure you stay there, but just make sure it's always realistic, because just so you all know, is what happened was then they came and they literally gave me double the quota. I was supposed to get an actual associate underneath me. They pulled that from me. And then they were like, so you just got the whole other side of Arizona and then Vegas as well. And Nevada, that's also your territory. Now we just doubled your quota. And if you hit quota, which again is twice the amount of work, right? Or more. And they're like, but if you hit quota, you'll make an additional $5,000 than you did last year on your base. And that's not with overage, right? Because where I made the payout was on the overage. So I was like, so let me just make sure I'm hearing you right. I make your company close to another $1 million. And if I do that, you'll pay me an extra $5,000. And they're like, Yes. Right. And so the reason why I'm just saying that is that was easy for me to be like, well, I'm not going to stick around too much longer to do that because I know my value. Just had another conversation with another rep, same thing. It's happened at a lot of the med device companies that I see. It's happened to me at all my med device companies. Well, they'll come in and they'll be like, oh, great, we're going to almost double your quota and we're going to give you literally zero more money. And so just so you know, when that happens, it's like, okay, I know my worth. I know I can go somewhere else, usually work less, make more. But again, the reason I'm just sitting here telling you guys that is some people have a real problem with that because they want to be like, I'm at the same company. I'm here. I don't want to have to change. I don't want to have to do something new. And I'll sit here and tell you guys, there's nothing wrong with that. But I just want you guys to kind of have an understanding and kind of thoughts if you are a rep or you've been in for 2, 3, 4 years and kind of in that same spot was like, I always had the thing of, I'm coming in, I'm going to absolutely crush it. And then I'm going to reevaluate every year, every 2 years where I'm at and do I want to still be here, right? And so the reason I'll just say that to you guys is some people will get mad and they'll be like, that's not loyalty and all this stuff, right? 2 things to loyalty. A, that same company will do reorganizations the following month in Q1 and you're let go. So they love you till they don't. That's just the way of the world. And that's business. That's not med device sales. That's just business. But number 2, just so you know, you guys can go look up the statistics, but they say if you jump multiple times, you will make way more money throughout your career. Not just in med device sales, but just in your career, no matter where you're at, because you'll actually get paid market value. So the reason I'm just saying that is because what happens, and just to give you guys an idea, is like, so for example, if you guys were, when I was a rep, you know, inflation was going over 7% a year. It's 7, 15, right? So in 2 years, it went up 15%. But then my company is like, we'll give you a 1.5% raise, right? So it didn't match inflation. And now I'm actually negative 13.5% compared to when I went and shopped the market, AKA went and interviewed with other jobs. The market actually was paying way higher. And so then I was able to leave and they're like, why would you leave the biggest company in the world? That's crazy. And it's like, well, it's crazy until you're making way more money and you're working way less, right? So the reason I'm just saying that is just don't get married to it. But bringing me back to Q4 strategies, what you can do is biggest thing is just go talk to your accounts, go have conversations. If you've been with them and you've built a relationship with all your accounts, this is when I would go and cash in and say, hey, there could be back orders. I had an example of one of my guys that he did all the purchasing. I had saved him multiple times. He's a great dude, but I saved him. He would text me the day of and he's like, crap, I forgot. Can you do this and all this stuff? And I would be able to save him. And so when it came to that time, I just went up to him and I was like, hey man, it's the end of my year. Would you be able to throw me a bone? You're going to need them anyway, all the stuff. And he's like, yeah, man, no problem. Just tell me how much you need and all the stuff. And so the reason I'm just saying that is that's a way to actually just be a good rep, go have a conversation. And that's why I always tell you guys, it's very relationally, because like for me, I didn't do anything crazy. It was like, they're going to use it anyway. But instead of, hey, you doing all these orders over the next 2-3 months, how about you just do it right now? Right. And then that they felt better because they had it. They don't have to worry about back orders because at the time we were going through it. And he's like, yeah, man, you've helped me out a lot. We have it budgeted. Let's go do it. So again, it's just being able to learn where you're at. But I just want you guys to know it's super normal to have a crazy Q4. I just hopefully wanted to make this to just give you guys a way to think. If you're going through it, just understand that it can be crazy and that's normal. Number 2, if you are in it, maybe a couple thoughts of like who you should go talk to maybe leverage where you're currently at or some strategies. And then number 3, just understand Q4 leads to Q1. Then everybody gets crazy. Everyone's like, am I going to have my job? Am I getting promoted? Am I getting let go? What's going on? And for me, I was always just like focused on like, let me crush this current year. Then I'm going to worry about it next year. Because here's the thing. I watch people worry about getting fired and then they never get fired. And it's like they worried for 2 months. And then I watch people who aren't worried about getting fired and they get fired. And then guess what? Then it's their problem in that moment. Don't stress. Don't try to go all these what ifs, because at the end of the day, it's either going to happen or it's not. And then you just react once it does happen. So hopefully this was helpful. If you can, press that like and subscribe button, send it to a friend or send it to somebody you feel like it could be helpful. If you guys are interested in learning more about what we do or how we've been able to help so many people break into medical device sales, click the link below. You guys can just reach out to us at Jacob McLaughlin, new to medical device sales, LinkedIn, Jacob McLaughlin, all the socials. And then also really fun, we're putting a community together on School. If you guys don't know that, you can go check it out, the platform, School, where we're going to put it free resources for you all. So it's going to be under new to medical device sales. Go check it out. But I want to say thank you. Hope you guys absolutely crushed the end of the quarter and the year, and go hit quota.